Welcome to the You on the Camino de Santiago podcast, Season 5. This podcast is for and about people getting ready for their first ever pilgrimage on the Camino de Santiago in Spain, France, and Portugal. With your host, Camino guide and longtime pilgrim, Nancy Reynolds of the Camino Experience. Today I have for you another story of serial pilgrimage, this time with Australian pilgrim Fiona, who you met twice in Season 3 of this podcast. Hi, this is Nancy, back to share this inspiring story of what's possible after completing a life-changing pilgrimage on the Camino de Santiago. Fiona walked the Camino Frances in 2023 with her friend Dawn. So now we will be hearing the perspective of someone 1 year past their first pilgrimage. In today's conversation, Fiona shares with us the importance of walking every step of your chosen Camino path and why that was such an important decision for her. For her first Camino, Fiona engaged an Australian company called Raw Travel to book all their accommodations and luggage transport. This time, she did it a bit differently. This time, she walked with her dad, and this time she ventured out onto a different route, the Portuguese. And this time, she booked all of her accommodations herself. You will hear that story, and then you will hear about her second Camino of 2024, the Kerry Camino in Ireland. And if that's not exciting enough, Fiona is going to share her plans for her next 2 walking journeys. I'll be honest, this one's got me itching to travel more and to explore beyond the Camino and Spain. Be sure to check out the show notes for information about the other pilgrimage options Fiona shares with us. Now let's see what effect this story has on you. Here's Fiona. Hi, Fiona. Thank you so much for coming back on the podcast.
Oh, it's a pleasure to be back. I'm always happy to talk Camino with you, Nancy.
Oh, yay. Yes, I was so fortunate because I got to talk to you and Dawn before your first Camino, and then I got to talk to both of you after your first Camino. So that was really exciting to hear the sort of bookends of that journey.
Yeah, it was fantastic. It was really, really nice for us to reflect on it when we got back as well. So yeah, it's been a pretty special experience for us.
Excellent. Well, the reason that I invited you back is because I heard a rumor from you that and that's actually not a rumor, that you have been out walking more Camino trails and have even ventured off the Camino for some more long distance walking, and your docket is full for the future at the moment.
Yes.
So I want the whole story, and mostly because this season of the podcast is focusing on what people do after the Camino, their reflections of their walk, and also what's next for them. Where are they taking it? So I think you are a perfect person to share with us some possibilities for that.
Fantastic. Yeah, always happy to share different experiences, and it's been a big year, that's for sure.
Oh, great. I can't wait to hear all about it. But first, let's put the pin in the map. Would you remind us what your first Camino was? What route, where you started and finished, and how long you spent out there?
Yes, certainly. So this time last year, so August last year, I did the Frances with my good friend Dawn. So we walked from Saint Jean Pied Port to Santiago, and then we continued on and did to Finisterre as well. So about 900 kilometres, and walked every K of that and had an absolute ball doing it. And we did use a company, for those who remember listening to Dawn and I, we used a company that moved our bags each day and booked our accommodation ahead. And yeah, sort of doing that walk that way. I guess as we were doing it, we discussed how we would do it differently for the future and things like that. The Finisterre section we did book ourselves, but we still had our bags moved. But yeah, so we just looked at different ways of doing it. But yeah, did so Saint Jean Pied Port through to Finisterre this time last year.
Okay. So there's some time on the clock now since you finished that walk. I remember talking with you shortly after you came back, within a month or two, I think. So now that we've got some distance from it, what would you say about that first Camino?
Oh, it was magical. Definitely life-changing experience. And I can't believe it was only a year ago. Like it feels like a lifetime ago. And yeah, I reflect back on it now and realize how much I've changed as a person as well. Like it's yeah, absolutely exhilarating experience that you learn so much about yourself. And I think that it tests you both like physically and mentally. That you can't help but sort of develop in that way and realize how strong you are, like both that mental and physical side. So yeah, it actually, I think I remember you saying on a podcast with somebody else earlier about that you finish it and you feel like you can take on the world.
Yeah.
And that is absolutely the feeling that I got at the end of it was like, right, what's next? What's in store for my new life? I feel like I've been sort of reignited, I suppose, with
Ah,
this new life. And it's been fantastic. And it's also been given me the confidence to demand what I want and, the things that I want to do as well. So yeah, absolutely life-changing experience for me.
it sounds like such an empowering experience for you.
Yes, absolutely, definitely. It's I think everyone actually should do at least one Camino in their lives for that reason. And it's something you can't explain until you actually do it. That
Mm.
confidence that it gives you, how strong you feel, how good you feel. There's certainly challenges along the way, but generally the overall feeling is just this, pride and sense of accomplishment, I think, at the end of it.
Ah, that is a great takeaway.
Yeah, I
Wow.
was, yeah, very, very happy at the end of it.
Yeah. Yeah. And was there any kind of a letdown or a slump or anything when you got back home? What was the return home experience like for you?
Yeah, it was very hard to stop walking. I got home and just wanted to keep walking, and I had this real, I guess, wanderlust where I just wanted to keep going. I didn't want to stop. I wanted to go back again and again, and yeah, do some different things. So I did definitely found it hard to settle back into home life and work life, and I've got a couple of teenage daughters at home and a great husband and work full time. But it was really hard to sort of fit back into that, and also hard, I suppose, because they, followed my journey, but until you experience it, you just can't explain it. So definitely hard to sort of adjust back into normal life. But then that realization that, well, I can do more. Like it doesn't actually need to stop here. I can balance it, which I guess is what I've been working on the last sort of 12 months or so, is trying to find that balance between the two and go, well, I still want to live big and have these adventures and really push myself, but I also want to be a good mum and a good wife and, just, have my things at home as well. So just trying to find that balance between the two has been
Mm.
definitely the focus of the last year. Because, yeah, we can't all just keep walking around the world, can we?
Some people do it, but they probably don't have the same ties or the same commitments at home that you do.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. And I wouldn't
Yeah.
change it for the world.
Yeah. Yeah. And so if you were to assess how well you've balanced the two, the wanderlust and the desire to get out and walk the world with being a full on, fully attentive mom and wife and all of that, how would you say you're doing?
Doing okay. Yeah, it's funny. The trip that I've just taken, I actually really missed home, probably more than I did when I was on the Frances last year. And I think that was just because I was walking every day, whereas this one was a little bit of a walk and a bit of a holiday. But it was, certainly a bit of guilt was coming in that I was doing it again. So yeah, that I found that a little bit more challenging. But also looking into the future, I'm looking at, doing Caminos and walks with my family and including them as part of it and things like that. So I think that's making a big difference at the moment to go. They're wanting to participate and wanting to be part of it as well, which is fantastic. So yeah, trying to find that balance, right? You can't help but get a little bit guilty when you're out there having these magical experiences in the family's home. But I'm so, so fortunate to have such an amazing supportive family that they encourage me and yeah, sort of say to me, don't be silly, go and enjoy it, go and do these things. So I am very, very lucky from that regard.
Oh, that's a great report there. Great report. So if we were to talk to your girls, what would they say about mom before and after the Camino?
Yeah, I think they think I'm pretty crazy. They don't get the whole walking for that distance, but I think they can see that I'm pretty determined and stubborn now, and same as my husband said, completely different person now. And
Mhm.
yeah, so I hope that I'm modeling really positive things for them and showing them what's possible. And the fact that my eldest now, wants to do one with me next year, and which is fantastic. And yeah, I want them to see that you can just have a go at anything and just try. And they are great, positive girls that just will go out there and do things and try things. And so I hope that me doing these is pushing them, and that's reflected on their actions a little bit.
Do I remember correctly that they are Girl Guides and they were on a trip while you were on the Camino?
Yeah, so this time last year they were in Korea for the World Scout Jamboree that got hit by a typhoon and things like that. So yeah, and then my eldest is talking next year is the World Scout Mood in Portugal. So yeah, and I believe they're doing a part of the Camino actually as part of the World Scout Mood. So
Oh, I got
that'll
chills. That's
be, yeah,
fantastic.
fantastic. Yeah. So
Yes.
yeah, they definitely aim high. Yeah, my youngest wants to do an exchange program at the moment overseas and things like that. So yeah, I think they follow my example, and yeah, just think what's possible out there, which is good. That's what you want.
It's great. And what you just described makes me think that maybe you were already setting this example for them before the Camino.
Yes, yeah,
Yeah.
hopefully. Yeah, yeah. We've
Yeah.
always been a big traveling family. So
Great.
yeah, I think, it's really important to see the world.
Ah, you must be so proud of them.
Yes, I'm very proud. They're great girls.
Yeah, I bet they would say the same about you. Although teenagers, we just don't know what teenagers are going to say, do we?
No, you never know.
Well, I have one more question about that first trip before we go on to the next step. And that is, you said that you walked every step of the Camino Frances. Was that important to you going into it?
I think it was actually more important for Dawn. She really had set in her head, I'm walking every step. And I think I really want to, but I know things will happen. So the fact that we did, I was so pleased and proud of. And I don't actually think it even came into our mind at any point to not walk every step. Like we were very fortunate. We had, very few injuries and blisters and things like that. And, we had quite a few rest days. But yeah, it was definitely something we both really, really wanted to do. And we also got told by people along the way to say to us, don't get in a taxi or don't catch a bus, because as soon as you do, you open that door and then,
Mm.
it becomes okay. And that's fine. It's fine for, if things happen. And certainly I nearly did this time around. Things do happen, and everybody's Camino's their own and they do it differently. But for us, we were very, very happy to get to the end and have walked every step.
Yeah, there certainly isn't a failure or you're not
No,
cheating if you take a bus or a
no,
taxi. There's no, you're not a bad pilgrim or
no.
anything like that. But I will say that experience is very different when you walk every
Yes,
step.
I agree. And I
Yeah.
have heard a lot of people saying that they would skip the meseta and things like that because they'd heard it was boring and,
Hmm.
just and hot. And that was actually probably my favorite part. And I'm so, so pleased that we did it. And I
Yeah.
think you're spot on. Every spot you get different experiences out of, and even trying to think of if I would do a condensed version, where would I do it? I just don't know where I would cut out because I
Hmm.
loved every single moment of it. So yeah, I think it is a different experience to walk it right from the start to the end.
There's something about the continuity and about staying in the game, if you
Hmm.
will.
Yes,
And if it gets hard, you want to quit or something hurts or you've got blisters or Achilles problems, take a rest day, stay in the game. It really makes such a unique experience.
it does, absolutely.
Yeah.
And I know we came across a lot of people who push for time and their rest days were catching, the bus to the next town. So, and I understood that they were doing it that way because they were on a time commitment, but we were lucky that we sort of factored in a rest day a week. So we had the time to do it, and not everybody's got that luxury. But yeah, I would definitely recommend, if you can, yeah, stay on that path and just keep walking.
Yeah, definitely. My first Camino, I didn't get to walk every step. I had some knee problems and it gnawed at me. It pulled me back so that I
Mm.
had to go back and walk every step. And so I finally I did that 2 years later. Was it 2 years?
Yeah.
Yeah, 2 years later. And then I was like, yes, that's
Yes.
done. And I swore
Yes.
I'd never be back.
Yeah, right.
Good
Yeah.
comedy.
Well, because we had our bags moved each time.
Hmm.
So I know we've certainly discussed that as well about going back and actually doing it with our packs.
Oh,
Yeah. So it's just, little things like that. You just go,
yeah.
oh, what if I did it this way? And yeah, so that you can always do it differently. And I never
Yes.
understand people going back to the same place time and time again until I did the Camino. And now I'm like, I know every time you do it, it would be such a different experience. You'd see different
Yes.
things. You can stay in different towns, all that sort of stuff. So yeah, I'd go back in a heartbeat and do it, but I do it with my pack.
Well, and you know what, Fiona, that will be a completely different experience,
Mm,
completely different carrying your bag.
yes. Yes.
Yes. I observe pilgrims a lot when I'm on the Camino, and I notice that people who carry their backpacks, they've
Yes.
got a different body language and a different stance and sort of a
Yep.
groundedness that I
Yep.
don't see in people who don't carry their backpacks. And,
Yeah. Yep.
we make up everything. So that's what it seems like to me. I don't know that that's real, but I do
Yes.
remember when I carried my backpack the whole way that one time, I was like, yeah, don't mess with me. Just don't.
Yeah. Well, this time around, I carried my backpack.
Okay, so
So,
let's talk about this time around. Tell me, let's put the pin in the map on that walk.
sure. So, I've done another two Caminos in the last few months. So, the first one started at Porto and did the Portuguese way up to Santiago. So, walked out of Porto along the littoral way, which is along the coast. And then, after about a day and a half of the coast, we cut across to the central up and then the spiritual variant into Santiago. So that took 2 weeks. I did that with my dad. And then shortly afterwards, I met my good friend Marnie in Ireland, and we did the Kerry Camino, which is starting in Tralee and then ending in Dingle, yeah, on the Dingle Peninsula. So yeah, did those couple of little ones in just a couple of months ago.
Oh my goodness. Okay, so let's do one at a time.
Sure.
All right. So the Porto to Santiago, your dad walked it with you.
Yeah, so while I was doing the Frances, my dad had real sort of, I guess, FOMO. Like he really wanted to do it. He loves walking, and he kept saying, I wish I was doing." And then when I got back, he said, "Oh, I wish I'd done one, but I'm too old and all this sort of stuff." And so I said, "No, no, Dad, come on." He's 73, but a very active 73, and said, "If you want to do it, we need to do it, and we need to do it now." So he was like, "Right, okay." So that was pretty much the aim of me going away this May, was to take him to experience a Camino. So I ended up doing me the planner, did a few options and options analysis, and came up with a few different ways that we could do it. So part of the original Frances, even Hadrian's Wall, because Dad is English, or the Portuguese way, and he picked the Portuguese way. So we ended up doing that. And the whole point of it was for him to have his Camino experience. So it was very, very much focused on that.
Oh, wow. Tell me how it went.
Oh, it was great. And to see somebody having their first Camino experience and also focusing on that's what it was
Yes.
about was
Yes.
just delightful. It just lovely. Like, every day Dad just loved it, just look at these villages and felt, so strong. And, he sent me a message at the end going, "I miss walking." Like he just loved it, and, said it was, one of the best experiences of his life. And it was just such a special experience for a father and daughter to have as well. Like I'll have those memories forever. And we just had such a special time over there. So yeah, it was absolutely, truly special just to see it through his eyes, and yeah, just see that experience that he had, and then sort of create those memories as well. So yeah,
Ah,
really, really good.
I
Yeah,
love it.
fantastic.
I
Yeah.
love it. And you just summed up why I do what I do, why I help people get started is the joy of seeing people take off on their first Caminos.
Yes,
There's nothing like it. It's just so joy filled.
it
And
is.
so, yeah,
Yeah. And
yeah,
it's amazing. Like I said to him, the first few days will be tough. Like, you struggle those first few days, and then all of a sudden you hit your stride, and you go, right, this is what I'm meant to do each day. I'm meant to get up and walk. And we did
yeah.
2 weeks without taking a break, and had our packs and all that sort of stuff. And even that I was worried about, I wanted Dad to move his bags because, I was worried about him carrying a pack. But nope, he was stubborn and decided to do it. So he, took his pack and did really, really well with it. And I think it was about day 2 and day 3, he was like, oh, I think I've bitten off more than I can chew here. He was really finding it tough. And it was about day 4, all of a sudden, you could see he stood up tall the way, his whole like demeanor changed, that he was like, right, this is it. This is what I'm doing. And then from that point forward, you could see he just loved every minute of it. And he
Amazing.
went from looking down and just walking to looking up and just seeing all this amazing landscape, and kept saying, you wouldn't see this if you were just touring through these countries. You just see it by walking. You see every house, every village, every landscape, every woodland. It's just so different. So
Wow.
he really appreciated it, which was great.
Oh, wow. And I'm just imagining you, what heaven you must have been in. Just the
Yes.
to get to share that with your dad is just remarkable.
Yeah. Yeah.
Just
Absolutely. Yeah. Once in a lifetime thing to
oh,
experience. So yeah, it was
wow.
fantastic.
All right, so I have a couple questions for you about the Portuguese and how
Yes.
you did it. Did you book your accommodations in advance this time?
Yes, I did.
Okay.
So booked it ahead. So I booked it myself, didn't use a company.
Okay.
So I booked it just to make sure we had somewhere each night to stay. And a lot of that was just making sure Dad had somewhere as well. And I ended up booking quite a few sort of Airbnb apartment type things. So, because last time, it was always, trying to find somewhere to do a good wash every, sort of week or so and all that.
Mhm.
So, a friend that we met on the Frances had said they book an apartment every 3 days. So, you've got a washing machine. And I went, that's a great idea.
That is a great
So
idea.
yeah, so we did that, and then also could cook a meal, ourselves, and just sit, in a little apartment with a bottle of wine and cook our own meals and things like that. So yeah, so we ended up staying in quite a few little apartments and Airbnbs, which was lovely. I wanted him to also experience that albergue style as well, but we booked private rooms in an albergue.
Okay.
So yeah, a bit of a mixture of accommodation along the way. So, but yeah, definitely booked it ahead.
Fantastic. And so now that you have booked accommodations for Camino, is that how you do it going forward?
Yes, I think I would. It was an interesting one. I don't regret at all using the company that we used for the Frances. That was a lot of places to book.
Mm,
And I honestly don't think I would have had the time leading into
okay.
it with work and kids and all that sort of stuff. So it was hard enough doing for the 2 weeks. I hate to think for the 5 weeks of
Hmm.
doing the Frances. It was also every day I had to be on my phone as we were walking, sending through images of our passports and doing the online check-ins and, seeing if they'd sent me the access codes and all that sort of stuff. Whereas with the company, you just walked to the town and it was there. Like they had given us an app that showed us exactly where the accommodation was. So I felt like a couple of times on the Portuguese way, I'm like, I could see, and Dad was talking about, oh, look at that and look at that. And I'm looking at my phone, trying
Oh,
to book into this accommodation, and it actually frustrated me a little bit. I was like, oh, it's taking me away from the Camino by
mhm.
having to do that. And it's only like 5, 10 minutes. It's honestly not that much. Like it's fine. But it was just a reflection. I just thought, a lot of people sort of have a go at those companies that book accommodation, but they allow you to be completely engrossed in the Camino. You don't have to think about what you're doing. You don't have to think about racing for a bed or anything like that. You just are walking and enjoying what's around you. So, yeah, I really appreciated that.
Mm.
But it was a reflection on this time. I could think back to it and go, gosh, we were very privileged that we could do that first time and just walk. But I felt very comfortable booking the accommodation this time. I used my Wise Pilgrim app to make sure I knew where the routes were and where the accommodation was and all that sort of stuff. So yeah, it was very easy to do. Yeah.
Excellent. I so appreciate that perspective because, yeah, some people do have sort of judgments about people, A,
Mm.
who book ahead anyway, but also people who use a tour company to do it
Yes.
when you could do
Yes.
it yourself. But the question is, do you want to spend the time or do you want to spend the money?
Yes. Exactly.
Yeah, it's sort of a time or money question. And one of the benefits, and I'm not actually um, endorsing booking ahead. I love that people do it the way that they do it and the way that's right for them. The companies know the properties. They have relationships with the property owners and they know where to book you. They already know, they just already know, you know?
We stayed at some outstanding accommodation that Raw Travel had booked, and yet we would not have known that they even existed because basically they're booked out by these companies.
Mm-hmm.
And they were absolutely like we stayed at a water mill that had a river running under our bedroom. Like it was just, unbelievable butter factory that had been converted, and the old monastery at Carry On, and so these places that were just absolutely spectacular. And I don't think we would have stayed there if we'd done it ourselves. And yeah, and the whole booking ahead, this time we were there in May, which is so, so busy. So I just didn't want to risk it. And I just didn't want that extra stress. I'm like, I've got so much stress in my day-to-day life as it is.
Yeah,
Like,
enough.
yeah, I just want to enjoy it. So yeah, I can appreciate. I think if I was doing it on my own, just with my pack, and I wasn't phased, I could sleep in a dorm or whatever, be fine. But when you've got
Sure.
somebody else's, you're responsible for somebody else,
Yeah,
then yeah, you just want to make sure it's all organized and you've got a
sure.
bed.
Great. Great. Again, we do it the way that works for us. And there is,
Exactly.
yeah. And I actually think that's the right way to do it. Yeah. So you mentioned the company you used for the Frances was Raw Travel,
Raw
RAW
travel.
Travel. Yes. And
Yes.
they're
Yes.
Australian based, I think.
They are. They
Yeah.
are.
Okay. Great. I'll
Yes.
put that in the show notes just in case if anybody wants to investigate that company. And
Yeah,
then I've got
sure.
another company that I have been referring people to called Pilgrim Paths. So I'll put that in the show notes as well.
Yeah,
Yeah,
great.
excellent. So the question I want to ask about the Portuguese route is if you were to do a side by side compare and contrast for someone who is on the fence and thinking Frances, Portuguese, Frances, Portuguese, what would you
Mm.
say?
Oh, that is such a tough question.
Probably a big question
There
too.
is a big question. There is nothing like the Frances, that traditional Camino route. The whole feeling along it is so unique. And I don't think any of the other routes have actually got that feeling and that camaraderie that you get from the other pilgrims, and the Bon Camino and all that sort of stuff. It's so unique and such a special experience. So I think the Frances will always be my favorite. Like I loved it. So I think it's a very different experience, but I think if you're going to do the Frances, do the whole thing. Like that's the experience, is doing the
Okay.
whole thing. So if you've got 5 weeks, then it's the Frances. However, if you are wanting to do something that's a lot shorter, so say 2 weeks or something like that, then the Portuguese is a brilliant option. There's a lot more facilities along the way. It's a lot more spread out. It kind of feels like more suburby. So, you don't feel like you're ever terribly remote. There's always something there. Whereas on the Frances, you go for, 15 kilometers with nothing at some stages. Whereas the Portuguese way, it felt like there was always, shops. There were so many toilets as well, which is the other thing the Frances lacks big time. So
Yes.
yeah, it was absolute heaven to be able to use a proper toilet. So it's the little things that are exciting.
To the pilgrim
Yep.
life, yes, these are
Yeah,
really important things.
exactly. So the Portuguese, and it was actually a lot more lush than what I thought it was going to be. I
Mm,
was expecting it to be quite open farmland, a bit more remote. It was beautiful, lush woodlands. It was not that much road walking, less road walking than the Frances.
mm.
Although I have heard between Lisbon and Porto is very road dominated and not particularly nice.
I've heard that too.
Yeah, yeah, we met quite a few people who'd walked from Lisbon and said they wouldn't recommend it.
Okay.
From Porto to Santiago is definitely the best bit. So yeah, it surprised me, the Portuguese way, how lovely and yeah, sort of yeah, lush and woodlands and things like that. It wasn't
Mm.
all the rivers and waterfalls, and it was quite beautiful actually. It was really, really lovely.
Mm. So, question about the toilet situation. You said they're much more available on the Portuguese route. Is that also true once you get into Spain? So from Tui to Santiago or wherever you entered,
Mm.
is that also true? There were plenty of toilets along the Spanish part of the Portuguese route?
It reduces a little bit. So they're definitely not as available as in Portugal. So
Okay.
Portugal, they're everywhere.
Hmm.
But in Spain, it definitely more than the Frances. I think the whole 900 kilometers, we saw one public toilet the whole way. So there definitely a few of them, but there are less of them.
Okay.
But there's enough. There's enough. And there are plenty of shops there as well. So you can stop and get a coffee and use the toilet and things like that as well, which, that's part of it, is those little stops along the way where you sit there and chat to other pilgrims and
Yeah.
enjoy
Yeah.
your,
Have a
your
coffee.
cafe con leche. And
Yeah.
so, but there's definitely more services that section of Spain than across the Frances.
Okay. That's good to know. For some people, that really will be a game changer. That'll make a
Mm,
difference. Yeah.
yes.
Anything else you'd say about the two routes? Compare and contrast?
Oh, I think, the bike situation on the Portuguese was interesting, which it is the Frances. You get the bike riders, particularly that last 100 kilometers, but nothing compared to the amount that were on the Portuguese, and massive groups of them. And they were Portuguese riders.
Oh,
And you would have 20 bike riders coming up flying behind you, and e-bikes as well, which you don't even hear them coming, and you're marching up this hill and they're flying up these hills behind you
actually on the Camino Trail?
on the Camino, doing the Camino. Yeah. So that was a little bit frustrating,
Mm.
the big groups of them coming, and they were all in a big group just having a ball, and they weren't particularly respectful of the walkers. So that was
Okay.
a little bit frustrating to deal
Sure.
with. So I know I've heard a lot of people complain about the bike riders, along the Frances, and I would say
Mhm.
the Portuguese is even worse. And then the other thing with the Portuguese way is the options that are available. There's quite a few, like out of Porto, there's 3 different routes and things like that. So really do your research on the different routes. And whereas the Frances, everybody's sort of walking the same way. And there's a couple of little alternates, but not a
Hmm.
lot.
Hmm.
So you're staying with the same groups of people. Whereas on the Portuguese way, you lose people quite quickly because they'll go off and do another variant or something
Mm.
like that. So that's the other thing, that you probably don't get the camaraderie that you do with the Frances.
Okay. Okay. And how about the trail markers? Is it as easy to follow the Portuguese as it is the Frances?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
Okay.
definitely. Very, very easy to follow. I think we got lost once and we walked about 200 meters and realized. But I do swear by the Wise Pilgrim app. I
Okay.
absolutely love that. And particularly in the bigger cities, I just use it and make sure we're on the right route. So,
Great.
yeah, but very easy to follow.
Great recommendation. Thanks for that.
No problem.
All right. Well, how about we move to the Carry Camino?
Yes. Yeah. So,
Didn't even know there was such a thing as a Carry Camino. What is the Carry Camino?
so it is actually the Camino in Ireland that they then used to hop on at when they arrived at Dingle, which is on the peninsula, hop in a boat and then end up at the top of the Ingles, at the top of Spain. So ideally, I would have loved to have done the Kerry Camino and then gone down and done the Ingles into Santiago. Like, I think that would be an
What?
incredible experience to connect it all up.
Oh,
And I still
yes.
want to do that at some stage, but that's the idea of it. So it's very, very different. It's not a typical Camino, but very well marked.
Okay.
So very easy to follow. It was a 3-day walk. That was it. 3 big days, but just 3 days. Very marshy, very wet, very
Mm.
Irish. The weather was meant to be nice, and it was windy and rainy pretty much the whole day, the whole
Oh,
time, which was that's fine. It was part of the experience. So very marshy, and our trail runners that we had sort of on the Portuguese way didn't quite work as well on the Kerry Camino, but they were fine.
Mm.
So I wore my good old trusty hockers, and they got me there in the end. It was just very slippery, but you're
Okay.
walking through a lot of farms and things like that, and they've got the great steps that go up and over the fences and stuff. So you're going into everybody's properties, and a lot of the sheep farmers, would stop and chat to us, and very, very friendly place. So
Oh, sweet.
it was a really lovely experience. Then each night, you stay at these little villages that have got, brilliant old Irish pubs that, you'd sit there with your Guinness and just listen to somebody playing a fiddle in the corner and things like that. So, it was a really lovely walk, but very different from normal Camino. There was maybe 10 of us doing it each day that we would come across, the same groups of people and then see them at the pub at night and things like that. So it was certainly not busy like the other Caminos are. So, yeah, I think it's gaining a little bit in popularity. I think people are starting to look for a different alternatives to the normal Caminos, and there's so many of them. So I think it is increasing a little bit in popularity.
So the people who you met, those 10 or so people who you were sharing the trail with, were they headed to Spain?
Oh no, they were just doing to Dingle. So yeah, or they were doing the Ring of Kerry, which is a longer walk that the Kerry Camino forms part of that walk. It's a whole week around the peninsula.
Okay.
So yeah, no, they were just doing that section. And there were a few that had done the Spanish one. There were ones that were planning on doing it. It was a bit of a training walk for them and things like that. So a bit of a mix. Yeah.
Oh, it's such a romantic notion, isn't it? To do the Camino walk for those 3 days and then get a boat. And the boat would take you, I imagine, to either A Coruña or Ferrol, where those are the two places you connect with the Ingles.
Yes.
Yes. Oh, wow. I walked the Ingles a couple years ago, and it's all in Galicia. So it's this rich, beautiful, verdant, lovely. Yeah. But a completely different feel from the Frances route.
It's on my bucket list, that one. I think it'd be beautiful.
Yeah, it's lovely. So you said 3 days of walking. How far were you walking each day? How long is that?
It was about 60 kilometers total. So average about 20 a day.
Okay.
It definitely, the ground's harder going. Like, it's very slippery. There's sections underwater that you have to sort of try and navigate and go around. So the tracks aren't as well maintained, I suppose, as and I suppose that's because there's not the volume of people going on it. So you really had to be switched on that whole time that you were walking it. Yeah.
Okay. And how did you plan that one? How did you learn about it?
There's actually the Irish Camino Society.
Okay.
So they've got a fantastic website. And also I was emailing the lady in their office in Dublin as well, back and forth, and she sent me out like the stamp booklets and all that sort of stuff. So there's plenty of information, maps, things like that on that website. So I used that, and they have exactly the same thing. You get your passport, you get your stamps along the way. Some of the stamping stations were empty, which was a little bit frustrating.
Oh.
But most of them, like, we still got a good number of stamps along the way. And then at Dingle, you go to the information centre and they give you a certificate. So it's very, very similar, probably like the Finisterre or something like that.
Okay.
With the whole setup with it. But yeah, the Irish Camino Society, their website's fantastic, got all the information. And there's quite a few different Caminos that you can do. I believe there's one up north that's only quite a new one, but very well signposted and a great walk to do as well. So there are quite a few of them around Ireland that you can do.
Oh, great. Well, I bet anyone who's listening who is in Ireland is always like, come on, speed up. We already know this stuff. They probably have done the research on it. But yeah, for someone who has not and doesn't know about it, this is a great find. And it might be sort of an interesting experience to do those 3 days of walking. And then, I don't know, how do you find a boat to Spain from Ireland? That would be a fun adventure.
I don't even know if they still run them or anything. I didn't actually look into that part of it. I was thinking, just get on a plane and fly over. But yeah, there might be a boat. And of course, because the Portuguese way, this spiritual variant has got a section on the boat as well. And I think it's the only official boat section of a Camino is that. So yes, I don't know if the one still runs from Ireland.
Okay. Oh, so interesting. Well, I really appreciate knowing about this, and I'll put the information or that website in the show notes so people can start to dig into that if they're looking for another option.
Yeah, great.
All right.
Great. And there are direct flights as well from Santiago to Dublin. So it's really easy to get there and do it. Yeah. So if you want to do both of them, it works well.
Excellent. That took away that excuse. Perfect. Well, that catches us up to date on what you've done so far. Yes?
Yes. Yes.
All right. Let's look at what you have planned. What's next for you?
Well, next looks like it's Everest Base Camp, which includes Skopje Lakes. Yeah.
What?
That
Oh
should
my
be
gosh.
October
This year, October
this
this year.
year. Yep, yep. So I'm sort of in the midst of training for that. Like I'm trying to keep up my fitness, I guess, from the other ones. But so that's planned for October. It's a little bit up in the air, just getting time off work and things like that. But I'm training for it. I've got a company sort of. I said to them, I'll give them a month's notice if I'm right to go. But yeah, so that is the aim is Everest Base Camp and Gokyo Lake in October. So yeah, I'm really excited about that. And from what I've heard about it, it's actually quite similar feel to the Camino, that it's very like there's people from all over the world. You're in the tea houses at night, sitting around chatting, meeting lots and lots of people, which is what I love. I love that real social side of it. So
Okay.
yeah, but then you've got, the challenge of the big walks each day that aren't necessarily big distances, but because
Mhm.
of the elevation,
Yeah, you're
quite
so high up.
difficult. Yeah, yeah, exactly. And then I had a friend that did it, and he suggested the Gokyo Lakes extension. And then when I read about that and listened to it, and a few podcasts about it and things like that, went, yeah, have to do that. They're these beautiful turquoise lakes, the highest freshwater lakes in the world. So you go up and walk across a glacier. So one day you you do have to wear spikes and things like that, but you get to see these magnificent glacial lakes. So yeah, that'd be pretty cool. So that hopefully will be later this year.
Okay.
And then the other one I have booked in is next April. So over Easter, I'm going to do the Kumano Kodo with my eldest daughter, which is the Japanese pilgrimage.
Oh,
So
wow.
from that, if after I do the Kimono Kodo, I actually go what's called a dual pilgrimage.
Okay.
So because there's only two UNESCO listed pilgrimages in the world, so it's the Camino Frances and the Kimono Kodo. So if you do both of those, you get a very special, you have a ceremony in Hongu, and they give you a certificate and a pin, and you go on a register. And there's only about 4,000 or 5,000 people in the world that have got dual pilgrimage that have done
Oh,
both of them. So quite a special thing, and they do this little ceremony with you and everything. So
you're making me
yeah.
cry. This is so beautiful. Oh,
And it's just like yeah, Japan's just amazing. I love it as a country, and yeah, it's very mountainous, very different, but yeah, just I'm really looking forward to that one and doing that with my daughter. So that will
oh
be
my
great.
gosh. All right. So what are the specs on the pilgrimage in Japan?
So it's about a week that you do. So you walk across a peninsula. So the one that we are going to do is called I'm going to pronounce it right, the Nakahechi Way, which is the most popular one. So there's, I think, 3 different routes you can do for the Kimono Kodo, but the Nakahechi Way is the most popular one. So it
Okay.
goes from one side of the peninsula to the other. And it takes about a week to do it. And it's around, I'm going to say about 80 to 90 kilometers. So there's shorter days, say 13 kilometers, but they are mountains. So,
Okay.
yeah, a few people I've spoken to about it said don't underestimate those days. They are tough days.
Okay.
So, yeah, once again, slightly short in distances, but it's because it's a lot harder to do. And you stay in little Japanese tea houses along the way as well. And the tea houses, they give you dinner, then they give you breakfast, and then they give you a little bento box for your lunch pack because there's nothing in between for the days. So you go away with a little bento box that's got sushi in it and things like that. So, but yeah, and then you stay in Japanese onsens as well. So you can go have a bathe each night and things like that. So yeah, it's all about the shrines along the way. But the Kimono Kodo was actually a pilgrimage that was built to worship nature. So it's a very different experience to the Camino Frances that's obviously, based on religion. This one is about worshipping nature and understanding, that closeness and that forest bathing and just enjoying where you are. So yeah, it sounds like it's quite a different experience.
Oh my goodness. This is amazing. And your daughter, of all the pilgrimages that she could do, this is the one that she wanted to do?
Yeah, she loves Japan, has always been fascinated by the Japanese culture. And we went a
Oh,
few years ago and she just, yeah, it really, really enjoyed it. So if there was one that she was going to do, this was always going to be the one. So yeah, she sort of all she had to do was very, very gently mention to me, "Oh, I wouldn't mind doing that." And I'm like, "Right, let's book it. Done."
Okay.
Okay.
I got the calendar in hand.
Yep, yep.
Ah, that is
So
sensational.
yeah, it'll be really lovely. So I'm looking forward to that.
I would love to have you come back and tell us all about that. That
Sure,
would be amazing. And
absolutely.
maybe your daughter would join you. And I'd
Yeah, absolutely.
love
Oh,
to
she
meet
would
her and
love
hear
it.
from her. That would be
Yes.
fantastic.
Yep.
I know the trip from Australia to Europe is quite an endeavor. I've heard it's a full 24 hours in the air.
Yes.
How long does it take you to get to Japan?
It's about 14 hours, I think it is. And you can get direct flights, which are a little bit shorter, maybe about 12.
Hmm.
But most of them you're going to stop along the way and go.
Okay.
So maybe 12 to 14 hours to
Sounds
Japan. So
much
it's not too
better.
bad. Yeah, absolutely. So I don't mind flying. It's okay. It's where it's part of the journey, isn't it?
Yes,
You've got to do
yes.
it to get to that destination and
The reward is
yeah,
worth it. Yes.
yeah.
I'm the same. Put me on a plane, give me one cocktail, a lot of movies. I'll take a nap after dinner. Yeah, it's just
Yeah.
I love international travel, all of
Yes,
it.
exactly.
Yeah. So let's see. What else do I want to know about Japan? When you go to Japan, will you be spending any additional time there or will you be going just for the pilgrimage?
We will end up spending a couple of days either side of it. So we're going to spend a couple of days in Osaka because it's just south of Osaka where the walk is. The Key Peninsula, I think, is actually the region it's in. So we'll spend a couple of days in Osaka. We've been there previously. So Kyoto's right near, which is an amazing, beautiful cultural place. Nara, where they have the deers walking around the shrines. But I think we're going to actually do a day trip out to Hiroshima and have a look at that. We'll then do the Kumano Kodo and then we'll go up to Tokyo for a few days, which is just a great, great city. It's just amazing. I did look briefly at doing Fuji while I was there because you can go to, I think it's the fifth station and walk to the summit of Mount Fuji over 2 days.
Oh my.
But the time of year is not the time to do it because it'll be covered in snow. You've only got a couple of months that you can do
Okay.
Fuji. So yeah, I did look at that. So that one will have to be another
Next
trip
time.
back. Yeah, yeah.
Well, one of the things that I hear all the time when people are planning to walk the Camino is no, just go solo. Just go by yourself, get yourself there, start the walk. You'll meet tons of people. You'll be fine. Some people do that. Some people go with groups. Some people go with a friend like you did with Dawn. The pilgrimage in Japan, is that the kind of pilgrimage where you just turn up, you and your daughter or somebody by themselves?
I think you could do it by yourself. I think there's quite a few people who do it by themselves. It's very limited as far as you have to book accommodation. You can't just turn up and not book the accommodation. So they've
Okay.
got very limited accommodation. You have to have booked a bed. They regulate it quite tightly. So
Hmm.
it isn't the same that you can just jump on a plane and go and walk.
Okay.
So you do need to plan ahead. And from what I understand, it books out quite early as well. So you need to make sure that you are organized with it. People do it solo. Definitely seen pictures and posts on social media of people doing it solo, but it looks like most people will do it as a couple or, a small group. There's a lot of companies that do it, I think, because it's so limited, the accommodation. So there's an amazing, I think it's run by the Japanese Tourism Authority. It's called Kimono Travel and it's actually tries to link all the local accommodation and service providers with pilgrims. And you can actually go on there directly and book the accommodation through them. It's the website, you have to request it and they get back to you 2 days later and you pay the money. And like the systems are quite old,
Okay.
but it works quite well. So you can definitely do it that way. And that's even a great one. They've got model itineraries. They've got what to expect, like in the onsens when you're bathing, the bus timetables, all like how to do it all. And yeah, it's a really handy resource. So if anybody's interested, I highly recommend going to Kimono Travel. Yeah.
Okay. I will dig that up and put that in the show notes as well. And the accommodations, are they shared dorm style or are there private rooms? Is there a variety?
There's a variety. So they're Japanese style. So basically, you walk in and it's an open room, and you make your own little futon bed. So those just beds like mattresses lined up and clean sheets and things like that, and you just lay out your stuff wherever in the room. So we're booking rooms that are just the two of us, like twin rooms, but you can have ones that have up to eight, enough for 8 beds in them.
Okay.
But it does seem that if you're in a group and you book it, they give you the whole room, just you.
Okay.
And so they won't add people in. But there's a couple that have got dorms, and there's a few that actually, they've even got the name albergue in their titles because they're Japanese people who have done the Camino and want to, bring a little bit of that experience back. So it's kind of a blending of the two.
Okay.
Yeah, so there are a couple of places that you can see that influence from Spain.
Okay. All right. Last question about that. In terms of the cost, how does the cost compare to accommodations on the Camino Frances or Camino Portuguese?
Yeah, I was actually pleasantly surprised. It's quite economical to do it.
Okay.
Spain's so cheap, like it really is. So it depends what you're looking for. So as far as the really cheap dorm rooms and things like that, you're not going to get that.
Okay.
But if you're looking for sort of some basic private accommodation, I reckon it's on par. It's quite
Great.
similar. Japan is a very expensive country to go and visit. So I was quite surprised actually how affordable the options were. I think it will be the either side. So the Tokyo and the Osaka that actually will be the more expensive part of it.
Sure.
And then
That makes sense.
yeah, but there's definitely a wide range of options. And if you look at all the accommodation on that website, you'll see there's some that are quite cheap, 6,000 yen for a night. And then there's right up to, 30,000 yen for the night. So there's a range and you can have a look and decide what suits you and go from there. So yeah, you might want to try different things. You might want to splurge for one night. Yeah, it's
Sure.
really versatile.
Excellent. Oh, I so appreciate knowing this. This is a great thing to sort of set as a goal, especially for people who have walked multiple Caminos and are now thinking, oh, let's try something else.
And it's so unique with the dual pilgrimage, like to have that and be on that database and that register, and you can see online like where all the people coming from, the countries that have got the dual pilgrimages, and
Great.
yeah, it's very special.
Oh, all right. I can't wait to hear all about that. Oh, excellent. Well, is there anything else that you would like to share? Maybe some advice you have for first-time pilgrims?
I think it is that there's so many options out there. So really do have a look around. And like I know they've just opened a new Camino across Costa Rica. There's so many different routes and options. I don't think anything beats the Frances. Like that is their hands down the original and the best. But yeah, don't just stop there. Like there's so much out there. Really have a look and see what's available, and get out there and see the world and just enjoy it and do your Camino as you want to do it.
Great advice. Fiona, thank you so much. This has been a pleasure.
No problem. Thanks, Nancy.
Appreciate it. I'll look forward to our next conversation.
Brilliant. Thanks, Nancy.
Thanks, Fiona. Bye.
See you later. Bye.